From Isaac Newton's Multiplication to AI-Assisted Thinking Part 1, number 1582, March 28, 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation. Category: Scientific Research and Neuroscience vs. AI. Preface: 1 month ago, I asked myself a simple question that no teacher in 74 years had ever asked or answered for me, not in Taiwan. Not admit, why didn't Newton define force as F equals m plus A? The moment I asked myself that question, the entire structure became clear. Addition implies independence, multiplication represents interaction, dependency, and amplification. If either mass or acceleration is zero, force must be zero. Nature behaves multiplicatively, not additively. That single realization connected everything I have studied across my life: mathematics, physics, engineering, business management, finance, psychology, neuroscience, biomedicine, and even the limitations of today's AI. The same multiplicative backbone behind Newton's law also governs how physiological stressors interact in the human body and why my TSI model frame works. This paper is the result of that structural insight. When the correct structure is found, complexity collapses into clarity. Introduction: the theme of this paper is that multiplicative structure as the hidden backbone of both physical laws and human cognitive processes. This paper discusses the differences between pattern recognition and pattern repetition, the role of scientific and math-physical structure, and the importance of efficient communication style, which together form part of the essential backbone of my work over 3 stages. 28 years in engineering and artificial intelligence applications, 9 years in psychology research and psychotherapy charitable activities, and the most recent 16 years in medical research. This morning's self-reflection contents revealed an important connection among mathematics, physics, engineering, neuroscience, psychology, communication efficiency, and limitations of present artificial intelligence technology. These subjects appear different, but they are actually linked by a single core idea: how the human brain recognizes patterns, simplifies complexity, and searches for the most efficient structure and communication style to describe reality. Since childhood, I have been strongly influenced by mathematics and physics. At age 11, I first learned Newton's law of motion: force is equal to mass multiplied by acceleration, F equals m asterisk. For many decades, this equation appeared simple and almost obvious. However, only recently, after my stroke and 9 months of neuroscience study, I began to recognize a deeper insight hidden inside this expression that had never been explained by any teacher in my life. Newton did not define force as mass plus acceleration. He defined force as mass multiplied by acceleration. Basic arithmetic has 4 operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Multiplication is not just a mathematical convenience. It reflects how nature behaves through interaction and amplification effects. Surprisingly, this obvious characteristic was never explicitly explained by any of my teachers. From elementary school in Taiwan at age 6 all the way through my graduate studies at MIT in the United States. If force were defined as F equals m plus A, then force could exist even when mass equals 0 or acceleration equals 0. That would violate physical reality. There is no mass, there is nothing to push. If there is no acceleration, motion does not change. Therefore, force must be 0 in either case. Multiplication automatically enforces this dependency. Interaction disappears if any essential component disappears. In addition, arithmetically, 2 times 3 equals 6, which is greater than 2 plus 3 equals 5. The result 6 greater than 5 illustrates the amplification effect of multiplication. This simple observation extends far beyond classical mechanics. It provides insight into how complex systems behave, including biomedical systems and even cognitive processes. After 17 years of self-study and research in biomedicine using a math-physical methodology, I have come to realize that the human body is one of the most complex systems due to its nonlinearity, dynamic behavior, reversibility, and organic nature. Multiplication represents interaction. It should be noted that multiplication is the simplest form of nonlinear interaction, which bridges the gap between my TSI risk formula and the complex reality of biomedicine. Addition assumes independence between variables. Multiplication represents interaction between variables. Many natural systems behave through interaction. Moderate stressors can combine to produce amplified effects. Moderate hypertension interacting with moderate glucose elevation may produce more vascular damage than either factor alone. Addition treats each factor separately. while multiplication reflects how factors influence each other simultaneously. Many fundamental physical laws are multiplicative because interaction governs behavior. Similarly, multiple disease factors can interact and produce a combined multiplicative effect on the body and heal. In general, interaction produces amplification, and amplification often determines overall system stability or failure. After 17 years studying biomedical conditions using math, physical, and engineering principles, I have observed that biomedical systems are more complex than engineering systems because organic tissue continuously adapts. Engineering materials such as steel or aluminum are inorganic. Their responses may vary under different loading conditions, but their governing laws do not change with the environment. In contrast, biomedicine's organic tissue evolves through feedback regulation, repair processes, neural control, and metabolic adaptation. Despite this complexity, simplified mathematical structure can still capture dominant behavior when key variables are properly normalized. Engineering experience shows that even complex systems often have simple governing structures. Simplification through structure. The triggering sensitivity index (TSI) model uses normalized dimensionless ratios to represent interacting physiological stresses. TSI is a warning index for risk in the majority of stroke and cardiovascular disease cases. TSI equals SBP/dBP 45 * SBP 120 * glucose 120 * 120. The last 120 is a simple amplification factor designed for personal usage. This amplification factor produces values with 2 to 3 digits, such as 80 to 120, instead of decimals such as 0.8 to 1.2, which improves brain recognition and memorization. This amplification factor may be adjusted according to the patient's medical history and severity of diabetes. For example, I had severe type 2 diabetes T to D for over 36 years, although my glucose has been well controlled during the past 12 years. Therefore, my amplification factor is 120. My wife has had moderate T to D, so her amplification factor is 110. My son has had T to D for only 8 years, so his factor is 100. Pulse pressure (PPSBP/dBP) represents pulsatile vascular load. SBP represents peak pressure load. Glucose represents metabolic stress that can damage vascular wall tissue, including endothelial dysfunction and calcification. Multiplication operation allows these three influential factors to interact within one unified structure. Each component contributes proportionally, but their interaction through the multiplication operation determines the total damage and overall risk level. While staying in Hawaii since March 1, 2026, I discovered an additional mathematical simplification. Some individuals, such as my MIT PhD advisor Professor Norman Jones, did not have diabetes and therefore did not have glucose measurements. Initially, this suggested the need for two separate equations, one including glucose and another excluding glucose. However, multiplication contains an identity property, x*1 equals xi. If glucose is unavailable, a default value can be assigned to glucose equals 120 mg DLTHE into 121,200 firsts. Multiplication by 1 does not change the TSI result. This equation structure remains unchanged. Therefore, the two equations, TSI-2 without diabetes and TSI-3 with diabetes, can be merged into one unified structure. This simple but practical design philosophy and math structure have evolved into one unified tool that becomes an easy-to-use iPhone app starting from April of 2026 for worldwide patients' daily use as a warning tool, not a medical diagnostic tool. By observing a high TSI value, such as above 100, patients can immediately check their blood pressure and glucose levels and then try to lower these input values in order to bring their TSI back below 100. A simple mathematical property removes unnecessary model complexity while preserving conceptual clarity. Meanwhile, many patients' health could be safeguarded by a simple iPhone app. Pattern recognition and cognitive speed. Over many years working as an engineer and a high-tech CEO, my thinking process has relied heavily on pattern recognition regardless of the subject I was working on or focusing on. Pattern recognition allows my brain to identify structure rapidly without requiring detailed calculations, sequential reasoning, or repetitive debate or argument. Repeated exposure to mathematical and engineering systems gradually forms internal structural templates. When new information resembles known patterns, the brain quickly detects a fundamental governing relationships. This phenomenon is often described as intuition or sixth sense. However, technical intuition is accumulated structural experience, because the brain reaches structural conclusions quickly. Interpersonal communication speed may appear slow by comparison. While discussion continues linearly, the structural solution may already be visible internally. This difference in cognitive speed may appear as impatience to others. But the underlying cause is compressed experience rather than emotional impatience. The mind jumps between structural layers faster than speech can describe their intermediate steps. Pattern recognition often generates conclusions before verbal reasoning is fully expressed. Verification through careful measurement remains necessary. But initial structure recognition can occur rapidly. Efficiency is a core engineering principle. As a practicing engineer, efficiency has always been central to problem solving. The shortest distance between two points is a straight line. Any unnecessary curvature increases time, energy, and effort. Engineering thinking emphasizes minimum unnecessary steps, minimum ambiguity, and maximum clarity. High information density improves communication efficiency. Excessive wording introduces noise rather than clarity and delays communication of truth. This aspect of current AI communication style can frustrate me from time to time. This preference for efficiency can sometimes appear impatient to individuals accustomed to descriptive narrative communication styles. However, the intention is not to rush people but to reduce unnecessary effort. I have experienced this situation frequently when communicating with many traditional medical researchers or clinicians. My engineering and scientific communication style typically follows a direct structure: define problem, identify governing structure, interpret implication. My style uses minimal words with maximum clarity. Artificial intelligence often produces beautiful language with longer explanations designed for general audiences. However, my scientific and engineering training prefers primary structure first, with explanationly when necessary. This is part 1.